live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Let's call the January 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Good evening, everyone. Let's call the January 25th, 2021 regular meeting.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Berngard.
Here.
Ms. Stobler.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Okay, at this point, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And turn off the mic for the other members. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next item we'll have approval of minutes. We have the minutes from November 9th, November 23rd, and December 7th. Could I have a motion to approve those, please?
So moved.
Oh, I had my stuff on my.
Second, Mrs. Thomas.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you. Any corrections or comments? If none, could we have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Mr. Berngard.
Yes.
Ms. Stobler.
Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Kinley. Mr. Kinley, you're muted.
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler.
Yeah.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. Moving on to Treasurer's Report. We have the Treasurer's Report from November 2020 and December 2020, the Investment Report from November 2020 and December 2020, and the Board Summary Report for December 2020, as well as the Student Activities Report from December 2020. So 4 from December, 2 from November.
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Any questions, concerns, corrections?
I have a question on the board summary report. Under support services, instructional staff, equipment, almost 112,000 of unliquidated encumbrances. Mr. Enders, do you remember what that's for?
Those are technology equipment from the CARES money.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, if we get a roll call, please, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Mr. Berngard.
Yes.
Ms. Stobler.
Yes.
Mrs. Grant.
Yes.
Mr. Kinley.
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. Next item is approval of bills. We have 2 months. And this is as far as I can recall, the only time we've ever had 2 months worth of bills included as separate items. So if there's no objections, I'd like to take these 1 month at a time under 2 motions. So I'm looking for a motion for the November 2020 payment of bills totaling $2,040,316.07.
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
Second, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley. Any questions or corrections? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Enders, can we do a roll call?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, and I request a second motion for December 2020 for payment of bills totaling $3,116,766.64.
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
Second, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley. Any questions, comments, or corrections? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we have any communications?
One thing to mention this evening, I did receive in the mail, and I'll show it just so that you can all see it, a recognition from the U.S. Census Bureau of the Jersey Shore Area School District and our help getting people to complete the census. So I got that certificate in the mail just today, and I thought I'd share that tonight from the U.S. Census Bureau.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the president's report. The first thing is I'd like to announce that we had an executive session prior to tonight's meeting from 6 to 7. And that executive session was regarding legal and personnel. And also we need to appoint committees for 3 different purposes. One is the Act 93 negotiations. The other is the ASME negotiation for our maintenance and custodial staff. And the other is a committee to evaluate the development of our school choice program for students for the 2021-22 school year. So for Act 93, we'll be appointing Mrs. Thomas, Mr. Kinley, Mrs. Grant, and myself. For AFSCME, it'll be Mrs. Thomas and Mrs. Petrosky, and they'll be aided by Mr. Enders from the business office. And for school choice, we have Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. Grant, Mrs. Petrosky, and Mrs. Stemler. Is there anyone who chooses not to accept that committee assignment? Hearing none, those will be the assignments. The remainder of President's report, just like to report, there were a number of Zoom calls that I attended over the past week or two. There was a CBA or a PSBA cyber task force call that I participate with. There were about 15 participants from across the state on that. And the discussion was regarding the CHOP policy report. That's the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia regarding return to school and the academic gap. The issues they discussed primarily were technology. Second issue was social, emotional, and trauma. And the third was equity and barriers to learning. And that a lot of the barriers to learning were surrounding the internet access in rural areas of the state. I also attended the PSBA. It's a weekly buzz call for board liaisons and presidents. There are usually about 50 participants on that phone call. And this was also it's a kind of a freehand presentation. I attended another one that included Senator Dush. He's our new senator, state senator for our area. And that was also organized by PSBA, and it was primarily for rural public schools. If you look at his area, I don't think they have any urban schools. The three primary concerns and challenges that we have, again, was the cyber for funding inequity and revenue losses for the public schools, limited access to broadband, and the third one was actually availability of vaccines for our staff, whether it be teachers or other staff members. We had another Zoom meeting with Representative Ham for the same purpose. Obviously, Mr. Ham was our local borough manager, so we were fairly familiar with him. Discussed the same challenges we did with Senator Dush, as well as the various mandates that come out of the state that are non-funded, and the moratorium on PlanCon funding. We had another Zoom meeting with the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, and both Dr. Ulmer and myself attended that one. It was an evening Zoom call that was chaired by the Chancellor of the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, Dr. Daniel Greenstein, and it also included the presidents and leaders of Lock Haven University, Bloomsburg, and Mansfield. Purpose was to provide us, of PASHE originally was to provide an affordable education to middle income students and families. And that has kind of gone by the wayside. They presented one graph broken up by different family income levels, and the enrollment across the board of the PASHE system. The only income level that actually rose, increased in enrollment, were those families that were incomes greater than 150,000. Every other income group had declining enrollment since 2012. So they need to fix something there because they've outpriced the market. They're looking at or staffing expenses that haven't been adjusted to reflect the enrollment declines. They're looking at distance education across campus locations, as well as what will probably be more referred to as remote classrooms. Is that a reasonable term, Mr. Becker? Where they actually sit in a classroom and watch the professor remotely?
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on.
One thing that they did say that was kind of surprising was that the NCAA, they've already met with the NCAA, and they're going to maintain all of the existing athletic programs for all of the universities. So right now you have, this is going to come first, wrestling at both Bloomsburg and at Lock Haven. But anyway, they don't plan on cutting any sports at any of the three in our area that are already existing. And they actually had done some analysis. They didn't show us the data, but that supported the idea that sports are actually additive to revenue because the additional enrollment that you get out of those athletes. One thing that was brought up again by the universities was that the state is still providing facility funding for higher education, although they've discontinued PlanCon for public schools. So before our Zoom call was even finished, Dr. Ulmer had sent out at least one email to ask one of our representatives on what could be done about that problem. So that's the end of the president's report. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to intermediate report. Mrs. Petrosky.
The IU director, Christina Steinbacher-Reed, presented her leadership performance summary. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not as pretty as the one they have online. But, I would encourage everyone to go out to their websites, www.iu17.org, and see what all the IU does and how, they educate the students in all 4 counties. She's on her statement here. She said, despite the unprecedented hardships of the past year, our IU17 team has maintained a steadfast commitment to advancing our vision of transforming lives and communities through educational services. I am proud of what we have accomplished, and most importantly, proud of who we are. We are a team dedicated to educational services. We have turned adversity into opportunity, making what we once thought impossible possible. While the challenges remain, so does our commitment to supporting the evolving educational needs of our region. And, of course, in the 2019-20 school year, obviously was unprecedented with COVID. Beginning in February, the pandemic planning became the primary focus of the administrative team, with the closing of schools and the intermediate unit on March 13, 2020. The priority became ensuring staff and student safety by moving the entire operation and service provision to remote operations. And I think that COVID-19 is still going to be the #1 priority for this upcoming year also. So hopefully there'll soon be an end to it, but it is a really good read. So I would encourage everybody to go out and look at that. That's my report.
Thank you. Student representative, do you have anything that you'd like to offer Mr. Parker?
Nothing this evening. Thanks for the opportunity, though.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
I want to start first this evening with reviewing back to our last meeting. We had a conversation at the last meeting under staffing, discussing the CTE Health Careers Program. I did invite Mr. Keene this evening. He's sitting to my left and is able to answer questions. But I wanted to share with the board some information based on the questions that we got last time. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. One of the questions we got was about if we had a health careers program, what would someone coming out of that program do? And some of the information that Mr. Keene has pulled together that you're looking at on the screen is workforce need data for Clinton and Lycoming County. So what you have in front of you is highlighted in yellow is the jobs that in Clinton and Lycoming County are high priority need jobs that this program would support. Now, I know we talked about some of your concerns about this program really not being the best program for someone who wants to be a nurse. But when you keep going and you see high priority jobs like EMTs and paramedics, which if you look on the right hand side here, they are a post-secondary non-degree award. So what you're doing with this program is you're starting a kid down a pathway where they can go not to college, but somewhere they can get a post-secondary certificate or program and quickly be in this job. And that would be something like an EMT or a paramedic, an LPN, or a licensed vocational nurse. Again, post-secondary non-degree. Dental assistants, medical assistants. These are all things that are on the high priority occupation list, would be students that could come out of this program and be well on their way to a post-secondary non-degree award and be able to start a job quickly. I also want to share one of the questions that was posed is, well, what is this program going to look like? It couldn't possibly be all health careers. The state has a standard document, which I have up here in front of you, for health and medical assisting. This is what the program would be, and there are very clear tasks, and there actually is a task list that Mr. Keene shared, which is pretty much generated from this left-hand column. So what ends up happening is a student in that program would have to be able to do all the tasks on the task list to be considered a completer. So when you look at this SIP sheet that includes the task list for the CTE program, you start to see the kinds of things that a student would have to do in that program. So in this first area under safety, they have to understand right to know and SDS sheets. They have to be able to transfer a client from a bed to a chair. When you go down to the next set of standards, under professionalism, legal, and ethical issues, they have to define the role of a healthcare worker. They have to be able to maintain acceptable personal hygiene and appropriate dress. These are all tasks that would be addressed across the 3 years of the program, very similar to what you see in another CTE program. I did attach all of these documents to the agenda. I sent them last week in your weekly report. But those are some of the questions that I heard last week or 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to share some of those documents with you so that you could see the kinds of it's pretty standardized coming out of PDE, what the program is, what the students have to get ready for. But I also wanted you to see what the need is in the community. And I think if you look deeper at that high priority occupation list, Mr. Keene did highlight some of those, but I saw some others just looking down through that are loosely tied to a health career, that somebody may take a health career and then jump into like a physical therapist. That was on the list. They're not going to be ready to be a physical therapist when they leave, but they may have some skills. You saw some things on that list that there are tasks that could help get them ready for that kind of a position. So I'll pause. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't have any questions, Dr. Armour, but you know, I just disagree with this. We're going to be adding another staff member. Is this person going to have to be a registered nurse somehow to teach some of this stuff? The liability there. I mean, we're high school. I Googled the medical field. There's no doubt there's plenty of jobs in the medical field. I know kids that are coming out of community colleges in the medical field are signing on for $10,000 bonus just to sign on to take their jobs. Again, where are we going to stop with this? Are we going to have an engineering CTE program in the coming years? We're adding staff members. We're looking at a $2 million deficit. Contract hasn't been settled. This is something to me that belongs in college. If you want to make the students aware of it, I think they're already aware of it through their peers, through their parents, through people around them. They know that the medical field is the place to go. If they want the job opportunities are there. This is something that belongs to me in a college setting somewhere. If you Google the medical field, you know, some of the best lead-ins to this field are your mathematical courses, your science courses, your English courses. These are the courses, the core courses that are going to help you get into this medical field and make you prepared for it. I just don't see where it fits into a high school situation where we're at right now, financially and everywhere else.
It's been my experience in 20 years in vocational education that this is a core tenant program of every CTE program I've seen since I was in high school. My high school vocational school had this. We're the only career and technical program in Lycoming County who doesn't have it. Williamsport has it and Lyco CTC has it. Keystone Central has it already. It's a no-brainer in terms of return on investment for the community, getting kids down that path. I don't get it. I don't get why that would be a problem.
I disagree. A lot of these are low-paying jobs, but that's you know, you can do different things. Harry's right in the fact that they want to be an RN or they want to go to be a PA. They better have strong science and they better have strong math skills. And you have to look at how much time does this take out of the schedule. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have healthcare, but we also are asking for 2 other things. I'm not sure should be the priority this year. I do believe that we need the JSAW, and I do believe we need the Family and Consumer Science as part of Chapter 4, and I think we should look at this maybe a year from now. That's just my opinion.
Most medical programs at community colleges, even Penn College, or even some of the state schools, as I read them, they'll have some kind of LPN to RN path. So if you're able to get your LPN through this program or get close to it, then they have a 2+2 that's going to get you to your RN. And then within the medical community, I know you can go from RN to BSN online at Penn State if you want and never step foot in a classroom, get to your BSN. And if your overall goal is to be like a higher level medical professional, there are programs that will take you from RN to nurse practitioner.
Everything you're mentioning, Dave, is in high school.
Right, but this gets their foot in the door, no different than any of the other programs.
Well, not if they don't have the proper science and math. I mean, we went through a spell in our district where kids that wanted to be RNs didn't take the academic chemistry and they weren't able to get in. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we don't look at it. I think we need to look at it. I just don't see it as a priority for this year I think the other 2 are more important for this year at this point. I don't see us that we should be adding 3 staff in 1 year. New staff above and beyond what and replacing staff's a whole nother thing.
Anybody else have any comments?
What type of certification does the person need that would run this program?
Mrs. Thomas, I asked for someone else. Okay, one thing, I guess I just have a question for Mr. Kane. This is health and medical assisting. Would they be certified as a medical assistant, or is there a certification for a medical assistant
Yes,
in the health field?
I don't think so. At the end of the program, basically they would be able to sit for possibly a home health aide, a CNA certification, EMT possibly for that certification. So this is the entry level program in the health field. Again, how pathways work. Our job at a high school and a school district is to prepare students for what's next in life. And that what next could be college in an RN like you're talking. It could be a 2-year trade school, kind of like an LPN type of program, or it could be going to work directly out of high school. which would be the CNAs and the home health aides and those positions. This particular program has two different sides to it. It has an administrative side for like medical records technicians, medical secretaries, those sort of things, as well as the clinical side for the home health aides, certified nursing aides, any physician, not physician assistants, but anybody that would be able to help out in a doctor's office in a clinical type of manner, working in a lab, those sort of things. So that's what this program does. And again, in a high school pathway system, we're kind of like a funnel. We're focusing the students' interest and focusing, kind of their passion to find out what they're really interested in. If they want to go be a physician's assistant or an RN, they go to post-secondary education. If they want to just get a job as a home health aide or something, that opportunity is right there for them, right out of high school, and they'll receive the certifications in the program to do that. So this is a program we've been working on for ever since we started the pathway, so it's been probably 7 years or so that we've been working through this program trying to get it approved, and I think it's an important one. I did survey our students, and we had about 33% of our students complete the survey, grades 9 through 11, and 37% of them wanted this program. This is the pathway program they're interested. So it is the largest section of our school. So I think this would fit very well. It meets a lot of the expectations of the high priority occupations in our region, as well as just the two counties, Clinton and Lycoming. So it would provide a great purpose and great opportunity for our students. I mean, I understand your concerns with the staff and those sort of things, but we're providing opportunities for our kids moving forward and their future. Especially now in a pandemic situation, having a program like this, I think would be very, very, very helpful for 37% of our population at this point. So.
When you said 37% of the 33%, but that's okay. Again, what type of person? What's their qualifications that they would have to be a teacher in this thing? And if you're saying there's that many students, you're not going to handle it with one CTE. How are you going to distinguish who gets it and who doesn't?
Well, that's a good question, and we'll see how the enrollment shakes out, especially the first year. Let's go back to the certification first. That individual will need to have some sort of medical assisting certification. They could be an LPN, they could be an RN. It's like any other CTE program. They have to have the experience in the field, and then they'll go back to school and get their educational degree. So we'll start there. As far as scheduling goes, we'll schedule them based off of need, and these programs are a 2-year program, grade 11 and grade 12. So we'll work at that. Obviously, our goal is to have completers. That's somebody that completes both levels in 11th grade and 12th grade, because that's important for us. This is also a program, and I did not send this document, but a lot of the programs serve non-traditional students. And this is a non-traditional program that serves female, which we have very few of. Most of our CTE programs are male-dominant, non-traditional programs, where the female student would be the non-traditional person. This is a program that's female-dominated, and a male student would be a non-traditional student. This is a very important concept because it provides our girls with something, probably hits Title IX, would be my guess, a little bit. Not to mention that it helps our non-traditional numbers with the state and the federal government with Perkins. So there's a lot of wins with this program.
So, and I will add to that. That is an item that almost always gets cited in a CTE audit. The lack of non-traditional enrollment. You fix some of that with a program like this, because you right now have a lot of programs that are considered male-oriented, and by creating a female-oriented program, you, as Mr. Keene said, you take away some of those audit findings, because you're creating a program for the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So it does fix one of your audit findings as well.
And just, I just have a comment on it as well. I know, having had my mom in a nursing home and my mother-in-law currently in a nursing home, there is a lot of turnover for the certified nursing assistants. They don't have to have RNs all the time. They have one RN for each floor, I believe, and that's it. And this program also ties in with the data that we found in the last, and the PASHE documentation the other day, that they're losing enrollment for kids that are in that lower and middle income bracket. So this is a way that when these kids get out of high school, they would actually be qualified for a job working in a nursing home while they were attending nursing school. So not everybody can kind of get the funding to support both ends of that equation. This would provide our students with that option.
And one of the things that Mr. Allen somewhat mentioned in his report is, in that meeting with the PASHE system, I did raise the possibility of a partnership agreement. When they fully integrate those 3 universities, they did tell us that that would be a benefit to us, because the university that's not the closest one to us is the one with the strongest strongest secondary partnerships. So when they are integrated, we will have access to high school partnerships around the state system. And they would like to have that conversation with us now rather than later, so that we can build the partnership into their integration plan for any CTE program, or any, not necessarily health specific, but knowing that they are moving the health program back to Lock Haven campus, and they are touting the PA program as well. They are interested in having that dialogue.
Yeah, the nursing school for Lock Haven used to be on the Clearfield campus, and that's actually moving back to the Lock Haven campus now.
I'm not sure they ever had it at Lock Haven, but it is coming back to the main to their main branch.
Correct. I didn't mean to infer that it was ever at Lock Haven to begin with.
Okay.
A lot of their other health programs are. Their PA program,
And they have a strong
one of the first in the nation. They have an athletic trainer program, as well as a physical therapy program. So all of those kids, again, could be somebody that could be in an advanced healthcare program at Lock Haven, be close to home, save money on housing costs, and have a job in the meantime, even if they were only working weekends at a local nursing home.
Dr. Ulmer.
Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
Okay. When would the board need to make a decision? When would be the latest in order for Mr. Keene to be able to implement this program if it was decided upon to do so?
Well, my quick answer is you would have to make it a part of your 2021 budget conversations. Mr. Keene, I believe him and I have talked about we would like to have, you normally do that final budget approval right at the end of June. But one of the things you're going to have to be aware of is making sure you have time to do a search, get somebody hired, and have them ready to start the school year coming up. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
It's just that state approval ends in May, and we'll need a teacher in place, or at least board approval for a teacher prior to the end, because once we hit that deadline, that's it. The program can't be approved unless we go through the whole process again. So,
okay.
And it's currently pending at that place right now.
So in the budget books that we received, is this in there?
I believe so. For 21.
I mean, I just picked it up today, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm just asking the question. Do you already have it included in the budget that we got to look at?
I
The
believe
position is not.
But the startup is, or, I mean, we have no funding listed for this, or we do?
it was.
The program funding is included. My proposal for this would be, this is where I believe I made a note in the staffing report. I would look at current positions through attrition and enrollment changes and not add a position to the budget for this.
I have a question, Dr. or Mr. Keen. You said before this person would have to, first of all, is it going to be one person or more? Was one of my questions. Second question is, if this person is going to have to be, I thought you said maybe an RN or something like that. They have to go back and get their education degree. Are we going to be able to find somebody like that?
So, and it would be one person. Just like all of your other CTE programs, the person comes out of industry. So I'll use auto technology, for example. The person comes out of industry with experience in automotive technology. We hired them, and then there's a program through Penn State they go through to get their certificate. In the meantime, they're emergency certified and vocational intern certified, and there's steps they have to go through that program, but they have to have industry experience. Then we hire them. They go back through the program to get teacher certified. It's a standard process. Penn State does it all the time. This program, I think, is a little bit easier for us to find someone because of the wide range of what we can put in there. Whereas, in auto technology, it's got to be someone who comes out of an auto shop, or in, trying to think of another example, not mechanical engineering, manufacturing. You got to have somebody out of manufacturing. But in every one of those CTE pathways, you take someone from industry and you put them back through the Penn State program to get certified. It's a pretty standard program.
If I could say something, if that's okay, if that's all right.
Yes, thank you, Robert.
Yep. So I'm actually in a CTE program at the high school. I'm in the business accounting program. I've been taking business classes since I was in 9th grade, and I've followed through with it. And now I'm at the point where I'm actually doing a work co-op and using these skills for a job that I'm in. I'm a bookkeeper at the Nipponos Valley Village. Those skills have provided me with such great knowledge, which has allowed me to apply myself to my new job. And I'm loving the work that I'm doing. And I think that this would just be super beneficial to all sorts of students, not just people who are interested in certain career pathways that we have currently. And I think that it would be great to expand it. The other thing, and this is more of like a student perspective, as my role as the student representative. Last board meeting, I brought up how I think that this career field is really popular amongst the student body. And that's true. I still stand by that. But I also think it's important to note how there are still students in my grade, I'm a senior this year, who don't know what they're going to do after high school. And I think that's a really scary fact. I'm not saying that there's a lot, but I'm saying that there are students who don't know what they're going to do. And these are smart students who really have a lot of potential. And I think if we had more programs that allowed them to experiment more and try with different classes, the more we can add, the more that it's going to allow them to really find themselves and put themselves somewhere. Because the worst thing that can happen is to see them graduate high school and not know what they're going to do. So they could go to college with an undecided major and spend all that money and make a mistake, or, every mistake you make in college costs you money because of the credits and all that stuff. So I think that the more we can have them trying out in high school, the better. I think it's going to lead to better decisions and a better workforce in the future. So that's just what I had to, my little student perspective on it. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Any other questions before I move on?
I have one. I'll wait. Does the guidance counselors do any, how do I want to say it? Do they call students in on a monthly or semester periodically and discuss careers with them, or what? Do they make them aware of these things, or how does that work with that department?
Remember, you're now in the mandate of Future Ready Index, where even down to elementary, in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, there are certain numbers of experiences, just like what you're mentioning, that have to occur. They have to be documented, and we even report to the state that we did them to prove that every kid had those career exploration activities. So
through the department.
Through guidance or their regular classroom, it's all overseen by guidance and the admin team. But yes, we have to do that by law and report it.
Okay.
Some of us still don't know what we want to do when we grow up, though, Mr. Bringard.
Yeah, I'm at that age where it doesn't much matter.
I tell my 8-year-old when I grow up, I want to be like him.
Wow.
I do have on the agenda tonight, this is just for information. We talked about this in my entry plan. It was one of my entry plan action items. So it's really there for you as board members to see it, that each building principal, with collaboration with their staff in the template that I created, has submitted, just for your information, their 3-year building action plans. These take a look at their building data, establish goals, list their professional development plans for the next few years. They really are comprehensive. The principals did a really nice job putting those together. That was something that was part of my entry plan. Those are there for you to see. Please review them and let me know if you have questions later. I also have on the agenda for tonight, and I'm going to flip over there so that you can see that. The cost and savings projections for cyber and cyber charter schools. I did share that with the board in an update, but I just wanted to put this out there publicly. As Mr. Allen said, we did have a lot of meetings over the last couple weeks with representatives. I do want to thank Mr. Casey, Mr. Keller, Mr. Dush, and Mr. Ham, who all listened to our comments about our needs and successes at Jersey Shore. One of the things I did was, after creating this document about cyber costs, I shared this with them. I actually sent copies of this to some of their offices after our conversations. They were shocked, as I'm sure some of you were when you looked at it. Just to review, because this was a question I got from the board, starting at the top of this report, this was your cost for JSAL to run an internal cyber program in 1920. Yes, I know it went up significantly, and actually, I want to be careful here. Right here is your cost for 2021. So if you add those two figures together, you're at about $628,000 for 2021. That's more. That's around double what you paid last year. That's my projection. We didn't spend that much money yet. That's where we are right now, projecting through the end of the year. But here's the interesting part. Notice that in JSAL right now, we are educating 200 kids. It's costing us a little over $600,000 to do that. Remember, you don't have somebody coordinating that full time. You have assigned that to guidance counselors. We gave the paperwork part to the guidance secretary. Mrs. Barry Probst at the elementary schools coordinating elementary. You kind of piecemealed that out to a bunch of people with myself overseeing it. We're doing that right now for a little over $600,000 projection for 2021. Our projection for 2021 cyber charters is 3.2. When you add up who we have out in cyber and charter schools, it comes right about to 200 kids. So for $628,000, we can educate 200 kids in our cyber school at JSASD. We're going to pay $3.2 million for the 200 kids that went to cyber charters and charter schools. That has been my conversation with your elected representatives in the region. If I can do it for $628,000 on a shoestring staff, why do they need $3.2 million? I share that with you all tonight. I shared it with you before. I've sent it to your legislators. I wanted to make sure that the public heard it. I don't have a problem with kids choosing where they want to go to school. What I have a problem with is how we are deciding how much money those places are getting. And right now, and I heard this loud and clear in one of the sessions that I attended, is that formula was designed for brick and mortar charters. So I'm sending enough money for someone to run a brick and mortar charter school. And if they're doing it online, as you saw from my costs, I can do it online a whole lot cheaper. And they're still getting as much money as if they were turning on lights and building a building and heating the building and putting carpet in the building and whatever else you need for the building. They're getting paid to run a building and they're not running a building. That's been our conversation with our legislators around the region. I wanted to share that data so that you can see that's been our conversation. Your legislators need to hear that. They've heard it from me. I know that Mrs. Grant and Mr. Allen and Mrs. Petrosky were on some of those calls. Feel free to advocate. Use that document. It's attached to the agenda. I also want to point out, you can quickly see, and I won't pull it back up, but I did put on the bottom right of that document, if just 5 students return from a cyber charter to JSAL, the district would save $46,000. So when we talk about a JSAL facilitator, that would be something that would be in that person's job description, recruiting students back. And if they can get 5 students to come back, they've saved the district $46,000. I did, and I know that concern is adding staff. That actually, my proposal is to add those, the facilitator position and the secretary to help with the paperwork in that department. Those would be positions that you could use your CARES dollars for because of the remote situation that we're in. So you have the ability for 2 years, 21-22 and 22-23, to fund those positions with CARES dollars. In the second round of CARES, you're getting $1.8 million. So you do have the ability to add those positions to the staff for 2 years and have them totally be grant funded.
I have a question, Dr. Armour.
Go ahead.
The 5 students at 46,000 savings, how do you arrive at that?
Let me pull that back up so you can see what I did. That is the difference between, can you see my screen now?
No, I have it in front of me, but I cannot.
If you look in the table in the middle,
Yes.
it's the difference between what it costs us to educate a student in JSAL versus what I have to pay of cyber charter. So when you look at the middle chart, let's just look at regular ed. In JSAL, it's approximately $3,000 per kid. But if a kid goes to a cyber charter on the 1, 2, 3, 4th column over, where it says charter cost per student, our average expenditure per student is $12,200. So as soon as a kid goes, that cyber charter gets our average student cost, which is $12,200. So if that student comes back, you automatically save $9,000 because you're not spending 12,200, you're only spending 3,000.
I see it now. Thank you. Yes.
I'm assuming the 3,000 is a yearly cost. That's okay.
Yep. I'm comparing the yearly cost to the 12,200 would be a yearly cost too. So if a student goes for half a year, they have to prorate that based on the number of days. But the 12,200 is an average. There's a yearly cost.
I have a question. Would our teachers be teaching these classes or not?
So we have on the table in negotiations an MOU for that. It's been in conversation that we could use, and now that we have the technology and the platforms in place from our CARES money, it makes it a little bit easier to go in that direction. I don't know that we could pick that right up in the first year, but it's definitely where we want to be.
That sounds good.
Which would be additional savings. Right now, that $3,000 is paying for the course and the teacher. So if we do the courses and the teacher, you really have much less cost. You're down to a handful of little things and the person facilitating it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on?
And you may have already covered this, but the charter cost per student we have here, is that the same for brick and mortar as well as it is for traditional cyber?
Correct.
Thank you.
The formula does not differentiate between the two. A charter is a charter.
The increase in 2021 versus 1920, would most of that increase be cyber, I assume?
Yeah. And don't forget that even though we had that increase in our numbers from our internal cyber from last year to this year, we believe we would have seen a significant increase in outside cyber had we not spent the summer recruiting and marketing our own program. And don't forget, last summer you changed your program from 7 to 12 to K to 12. If
Right.
you didn't have K to 6, every one of those K to 6 kids would have cost you 12 grand if they went somewhere else.
Right.
I did have a meeting this morning with PDE, and that was a question that was asked. You cannot, we asked multiple times, you cannot use your CARES dollars to pay your cyber charter bills. It's not one of the allowable expenses.
Oh.
We asked.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
That's her task.
Sorry, Mr. Enders, I tried.
The other interesting thing, I'm on that statewide cyber task force, is even the traditional digital cybers are receiving CARES money.
Oh.
So the same money we get for cleaning the desks and, the disinfectants and all those other things that we have to do that they don't have to do because the kids are sitting home, they're getting paid for them.
That's terrible.
So that's one of the things that we had a pretty vigorous conversation about this past week on that committee.
Feel free to share that with your legislator.
Absolutely.
Didn't they're the ones that passed it?
Well, but there really hasn't been a lot of changes in the cyber laws since
No.
they were enacted.
Yeah, I agree.
They haven't really kept them up to date because there's so much pressure from the representatives from the high population areas that have more representation in the Assembly and in the Senate than what we have out here in rural Pennsylvania.
I do have also on the agenda tonight for your information is the 21-22 proposed school calendar. This did go through the Professional Learning Committee. Mrs. Thomas is on that committee. There's various faculty members and staff members on it. They have worked through it. We made some changes based on their feedback, but it is on the agenda tonight for everybody to see. Anybody have any input on that before I move on? Feel free to let me know later if you don't right now. That will come back around and be put on the agenda next month for approval. And that's a good timeline. It gives families about 6 months notice before the school year starts, so they know when their vacations are and all those things. I do want to point out one major change that you'll see in this calendar is now that we are approved for flexible instructional days, there's a note at the bottom where the snow days typically would be that said that we've been approved for 5 flexible instructional days. We would use those first, but we do still have 2 snow makeup days if needed. There may be some time where something odd happens and we have to completely not have school. So we do still have 2 snow makeup days, but we would intend to use those flexible instructional days first. And also on the agenda, there are 5 policies on there for your first look. Those, again, Pam and I are still working on PSBA language edits. Most of those are language edits based on changes in legislation or changes in school code since the last time those have been looked at. Any questions about any of those?
The class rank one. Are we going to determine what, how far out we're taking those? I mean, is it 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, 4, because it can get ridiculous. There's no identification as to what the limit there is. I mean, so when you make that statement, if 2 people have the same class rank, are we taking it out 10 decimal places before we decide it's something different? Or are we looking at 2? Because it's not it's not defined.
Yeah, it mentions the tie and how we reflect that in class rank.
No, but my question I'm asking, Craig, is if someone has a 98.34 and another one has a 98.34, are we going then to the next level to make the decision on to break the tie, or is there a point in time when we can have a tie? Because if you keep just going out the decimal points, there's never a tie. So what defines that we're going to have a tie?
I have the right person in the room here to answer that, Mr.
We don't really designate in the policy how far we're going.
Mr. Keen's answer was he keeps going out the decimal points until they're not tied anymore.
Well, that's the way. That's what I'm saying. So I don't like that. This policy needs to me either define it, or because that can never happen then.
Right. So the language about a tie would be almost nil.
It's superficial in there. It sounds like we have that situation, but we always
really don't. So I'll make that change and we'll reflect what we actually do. Okay. Anything else? Okay. If you see something after the meeting, let me know. We will make any changes before the next meeting. I do want to point out that I have had a lot of conversations in the last week. I know Mr. Allen mentioned on our calls about vaccine distribution, advocating for our staff to receive vaccines, talking to local medical providers, and sharing information with staff about where they can get appointments and get vaccines. We have had staff already be able to get in and get vaccines and are very excited about it. And that could be anything from, Saturday afternoon, I got a message from Geisinger that said it looks like we're going to have extra appointments tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. Can you send something out to the staff so if anybody can get on and get an appointment, they can get scheduled? We've been doing that regularly, and it's been helping our staff get in. I reached out to Geisinger last week and said, anything you can do to help us get us there, we want to get there. It helps us get in a much safer place. So that has been a lot of what's been happening in my office in the last week. And finally, I do want to recognize Stacy Anderson. Stacy Anderson is our December Employee of the Month. Stacy is our admin assistant in the special education office. She is a valuable asset to the administrative team. You don't do anything in special ed anywhere in the district that Stacy Anderson is not involved. She handles all the paperwork. She does all the filing. She's the one that hands me those folders of papers I got to sign every day. She's highly involved around the district, and she does a great job. All of our special ed families know her. She's a great person to be Employee of the Month. So thank you to Stacy Anderson. And that is all I have for my report.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ulmer. Okay, at this point, we'll move to courtesy of the floor. As we've been doing throughout the virtual meetings, we'll be only having the first courtesy of the floor, but we're not limiting that to things that are on the agenda the way we had been when we were meeting in person. So anybody that calls in can discuss whatever's on their mind. So could we open up the phones, please, Dr. Ulmer?
The phone number is 570-398-5576. Again, 570-398-5576, and it is 8:08 p.m.
Yes, my name is Bert Francis, and I'm from Jersey Shore, and I'm calling the board to share a phone call I had today from a relative who's a retired professor in Connecticut. He's a professor of economics and environmental sciences. Oh, and by the way, too, he's also a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And I thought I'd share that with you as, Yes. And,
We can hear you, Mr. Francis.
The reason I'm saying that is his father was a native son of Jersey Shore. His name was Jack Yo. He went to Lock Haven University. He became Dean of Men at Bloomsburg and went on to be a superintendent of schools and so on and so forth. So I just thought I'd let you in on a little of that family history, and maybe, I don't know, if we do we have some place where we I know we have places where we recognize our athletes and so on and so forth and all of that. Do we have a place where we do any recognition or anything where people have really achieved great academia credits? And just curious. My nephew, Gary Yo, he and 14 others currently are working on a document on global warming and et cetera, at a request of 189 countries that they will be making presentations to this document to include. And he's very, very optimistic about our new government and the strides they're going to make in taking care of some of these things. So thank you for your time and doing a great job, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Francis.
Move that we close courtesy of the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley. Any discussion or comments on closing courtesy of the floor? Okay, we'll have a roll call, please, to close courtesy of the floor at 8:13.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard, Brungard,
It looks frozen on my screen.
Mine too.
He's deep in thought.
What that is.
Ms. Stolzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard, you want to come back?
It looks like he's frozen.
I'm
Somebody
looking.
need to send
Yeah.
him a message.
I already did. His network went down. He's rebooting it.
Usually it doesn't take too long, so we can hold the last vote until he returns.
I just hit admit, so he's coming in.
Okay, I'm back, I guess.
Mr. Brinker, are you okay to close courtesy of the floor?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Network went down.
9-0.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. Okay, move on to personnel. We have items A through F.
So moved, Mary.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, for clarification, did you mean A through G?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I did. Correct. Thank you, Mr. Enders.
You're welcome.
So moved.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Second.
I got Mr. Becker. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a
I have a
question.
question.
D. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, I'll wait.
A question on D was, I assume this was advertised and the interviews were taking place for this position?
It was advertised, and that was the only applicant.
Really? Okay.
And I believe my understanding is you were in this situation before, and that person typically does girls tennis, but has before done boys when there was an opening.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. So if you see Mrs. Dincher, thank her for stepping up.
Yes. Yes. I have a question on G. Volunteer wrestling coach. Is this going to be a paid position in the future? With, I heard maybe one of the coaches is going to drop out.
I haven't received any resignations yet, but my understanding is that they asked for this volunteer to help out because of someone's work situation. So if there is a resignation, they would already have the volunteer in place to help.
Will that become a paid? Okay, that
would
will
have-
become a paid position then.
That's speculative at this time, I guess.
Okay.
And even if it does, it still has to go through interviews. We'd have to go through the process of advertising.
It would have to be advertised and opened and come back for approval if there was an opening.
Well, that would be the head coach's choice, wouldn't it?
This is an assistant coach though, correct?
Yeah, that would be the head coach's choice, but it would
Well,
have to be
really
open.
just a matter of clearances as long as the head coach selects them.
Right.
They would have clearances anyway as a volunteer.
Right.
I assume letter E is working with our group, our technology group. You said technology co-op, it's with Jersey Shore, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay.
You typically would approve a student co-op at the beginning of the school year. We didn't do that this year. The department wanted to wait because those students weren't here in the spring and missed a chunk of instruction. So they waited until mid-year. So the student will at least get a half a year, but the department wasn't ready to give us a student at the beginning of the school year. So that's why you're doing that now.
Dr. Ulmer, I have a question as it regards to letter F. Actually, I have several questions, so we'll go one at a time. Can you tell me specifically what that's for? I know we've approved a couple of these in the past, and I'm now curious as more people are bringing this to my attention.
So these positions are open to work any athletic event. It could be a clock operator, someone who keeps the score, someone who sits at the table and runs the scoreboard, someone who takes tickets. Depending on what the athletic event it is, there's a bunch of different positions assigned by your athletic director. She posts those positions and it works through the process and selects the people and puts them on the agenda for you to approve.
Okay, my next question, and I don't know this particular person at all. Do you know if she's a parent of one of the children that are participating in sports?
I do not know.
Okay, my follow-up question to that would be, given that we're having such a strain with having parents in the gyms, did we reach out prior to hiring people? Did we reach out to all parents to see if they wanted to volunteer at their children's events? To do timekeeping and everything that we're hiring for?
I had that conversation with Mrs. Henry over the summer, and I don't her conversation with me was there typically is the same group of people that come back year after year after year, and there usually isn't a lot of openings for athletic workers. But we did have that conversation. I don't know, I can't answer, but I will follow up with her and ask if when a position becomes open, how does she publicize it, or is she going to parents first? Is that what if that's what you would like me to do? But I will do that anyway and ask for clarification.
I would. As you know, this has been a hot topic over the past few weeks, and I would absolutely disagree with hiring someone or giving that opportunity to someone that's not a parent first. So thank you for checking into that for me.
Just a follow-up question to Mrs. Grants. Is there a maximum number of these positions that we permit to be, I guess, hired as an as-needed position?
No, it could be, in order to do it, they have to have clearances and be board approved. So if somebody's willing to go through that process, we can board approve 200 people. The issue becomes how many of them are available to work. And I think that's what comes down to, how are we selecting, and I don't know Serena's process, but she may be trying to find people that are available most nights to work, so she's not trying to stumble around. I mean, tonight there's 3 events in one gym, so there's probably the same set of people working all 3 events. But I understand what Mrs. Grant is saying. It would be easier on our capacity if there were 3 different sets of people for that event, and if those parents wanted to be board approved and get clearances.
So that's a conversation you did or did not have before the beginning of winter sports?
We had that back in the summertime, so I will follow up and find out like what kind of turnover there is, and are we asking parents when there's an opening?
Okay, and I would like to encourage us to do that moving forward, please.
The people need to be available for more than just going to watch, a specific sport that they're interested in.
Sure, Mr. Allen, I'd realize that, but wouldn't you immediately make yourself available if it was your child? I don't think availability would be a problem then.
Except they couldn't pay me. It's illegal to pay us.
I'm okay with volunteering for anything, and I've had so many people address this throughout the week with me that I have a feeling they'd become available.
Yeah, I fielded the same questions in the fall for the fall sports though, so I certainly can sympathize with everybody in your ear. So thank you for bringing that up.
The live stream is working. Mr. McCormick and I checked it. You can watch sports on YouTube.
Oh,
Is that
I know
for
it's
all?
not the same. Sorry, Mrs. Grant, what was that?
I didn't get a chance to follow up with you in executive session. I apologize. Is that for all winter sports now?
And one thing I will say publicly, and we're still working through, we as a district, because we have legal issues with district publicity, we're still working through, if a student's family did not approve district media release and they are on an athletic team, we cannot live stream that event. But we are making sure we have that conversation with the family. They can approve, and that was my conversation with Serena yesterday. She's reaching out. They can give us permission to live stream athletic events and not be part of any other publicity, and that's okay. And we're seeking those approvals so that we don't have that issue.
I had a question about that. So what if at an away game and they have the same thing? Then what do you do in that case? They're going to be on social media at another person's gym, and that's okay.
We're not liable for that, Mrs. Petrosky.
Makes no sense though.
or if a company comes in and streams the game for them, they're gonna get streamed. Or if you're sitting in the stands as an adult and you put it on Facebook Live,
yep,
they're in public. That's a public venue.
The difference is we're doing it, and we know that family did not agree to our media release.
Oh.
But we're working through those. I feel strongly that parents will at least give us release for that, if not other media.
So who is running the cameras for these events? This probably isn't the time to ask that question, is it? But I was just wondering how that whole process was going to work.
I know it's on right now, and I looked at it with my own two eyes.
I want to see.
Stand on the other side of it, but it's working.
And you can see more than one sporting event at a
your
time?
athletic director and that's where another one of those could be a game, one of those athletic people that you approved.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm excited to watch it.
Not right now, unless you have
No.
to.
Oh, come on.
Patrice will be putting a split screen up.
Yes. Oh. Thank you for all your work to get that going.
It
to
was
resolve the problem.
You would think it would be simple. It's not
wasn't.
simple.
Nothing simple today.
No.
Okay, any other questions on A through G? Personnel. Okay, hearing none, could we have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler, Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. Moving on to buildings and grounds. We have items A through D.
So moved, Mary.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Brungard. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just have one on A, B, I guess. I wasn't able to find it. I couldn't bring up the piece on it, but what is the cost of that 10-year warranty? Is there a cost affiliated with it?
Which one are you asking about, Mr. Brungard? I'll pull them up.
Well, both of them basically then.
Okay.
I guess there's three of them.
Yep. So letter A is Avis. That's 24,124. Letter B is Jersey Shore Middle School. That is 54,143. And then letter C is the high school. That is 43,630. I would point out the difference in the high school and middle school is they have those broken down. In the high school, it's not the whole roof. So that's why there's less cost for a high school 10-year warranty than the middle school, because it's not the whole thing.
Do they pre-examine these roofs and stuff before they come out with these prices, they almost have to look at them beforehand, right?
Yep. So when you look at, they do, and when you look at, for example, at Avis, they actually have a list of concerning items. So at Avis, there's 6 things. It says there's flashing that needs repaired, coating on some of the external, refastening some of the metal flashing, filling pitch pockets, cleaning debris from around the drains, and then they would again walk all roof areas and provide miscellaneous preventative repairs. So there's items that they know they have to do right away, and then they also are covering us for 10 years to do those repairs or checks again.
Okay, I did see that part of it. Thank you.
So that's all included in this price, like the 24,000 that covers the repair work, and then the guarantee for 10 years, right? 10-year warranty.
So the work is required in order for them to put the warranty in place. So that's covered. And then the warranty is also part of that price.
Okay.
And if you remember, you did 2 of these last summer for other areas of the district.
Yeah.
Dr. Ulmer, does the warranty just cover what's going to actually be worked upon in essence? So if it's not listed there, is the warranty going to cover something that's, that we didn't actually fix under the warranty that we're paying for?
So it actually does provide for miscellaneous preventative repairs in the future. And that's actually one of the items in the repair scope. Is the last one is in each of them is walk all roof areas and provide miscellaneous preventative maintenance repairs. And they actually have listed below that for 10 years, which is the life of the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about D. I was wondering, D, is that to replace the plow truck that burned or not?
This is the one you had budgeted to replace for the old dump that can no longer be inspected. So we're gonna have to come back and talk about the final response from the insurance company. We don't have that yet, but remember I said we needed to move on something because we're staring at snow tomorrow, and I have one truck with a dump box on it that can spread cinders. So the reason we're moving on this budgeted expense now is because right now this one still has a 6 to 8 week turnaround. So we're going to be at least another 2 weeks before we can even talk about at the next meeting what the insurance company said. I'm trying to not get us in a position where we get another big snowstorm and we're stuck. But Mark has reached out to local companies and asked, can I call you at the last minute if I need support? Because you do have one truck that can spread cinders right now.
I think it's a really good price, and there's nothing fancy about it. I think people need to understand we're buying a new truck, but we're not buying a fancy new truck. We're buying one that's going to be useful for a long time, and the warranty is good for repair work and all of that, right?
And remember, this is the benefit of co-stars. You get that bulk. Everybody in the state that's looking at the contract pricing is going to get the same vehicle, and they're buying them in mass, and we're all getting the same thing, and they take all the bells and whistles off of them, and that's what you get.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If there's no further questions, can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Berngard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. Moving on to finance. And this is the resolution to stay within the Act 1 index as assigned by the state for our school district. Again, this does not mean we're going to the index. It just means we cannot go above the index. So for any taxpayers that are listening in.
So moved, Mary.
Second.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Can we refresh for the public what the index is? I believe it's 4.1. Am I correct on that, Ben?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. That's a good point.
Value of
1%. And how many mills would that be, Ben?
based on the assessed values I got.
Just the average between the two.
Clinton County would be a 0.55 mil increase, and Lycoming County would be a 0.75 mil increase. Value of it's just over $590,000.
Thank you. Any other questions on Finance A?
Can I make a comment, Ben, on, you're saying that, and if I'm a person listening to that, I think, oh my, we're really getting punished in Lycoming County, but really it's balanced and we're about the same, right? Because the assessments are different?
The assessments are different. It also goes back into the STEB market values, State Tax Equalization Board market value that they set for the two counties. And then it goes into considering which county hits the 4.1% first. And in this scenario, it's Lycoming County. This year, they're very, very close. It could flip-flop with change in assessed values through the spring here. That Clinton County will hit the index first. But based on the assessed values that I had, it was Lycoming County. But like I said, it's very close.
Okay.
Any additional comments or concerns? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a roll call, Mr. Enders?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Burngard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, moving to miscellaneous. We have A, B, C, and D. Could we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mary.
Second.
Any other questions, comments, explanations? Okay, hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Burngard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrosky,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Old business, does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss on old business that was unfinished or to add to old business for our next meeting? Okay, thank you. At this point, we will be going into executive session for legal and personnel. And after we complete that executive session, there'll be no further business conducted.
Have a good evening, everybody.
You too, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.